for this purpose, general purposes, flipping 101, this is aggregate data. So that takes oceanside and bayside, oceanfront and bayfront, right? Everything in between, single family homes. On average, you've got, of those 200 homes that have transacted in the last 6 months, they're on average 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, built 1986 with just over 2,000 square feet, and they sold for $1.5 million. So this is going to be pretty interesting, or easy, I think, as far as the numbers go. So let's work with the math. So how do we find ourselves a good deal? So I always like to do with the laws of averages when I'm talking about a deal. So it's a good way to stay on the conservative side of things when you're playing around with the average sales price, okay? So I'm going to use this data to find deals for clients, okay? And for you to find deals for yourself. So when we're looking for a good flip, we want something that can ultimately sell for $1.5 million. So we're going to call that the ARV, after repair value, okay? So we want something that ultimately, after we renovate, it's going to be worth $1.5 million, okay? So how do we find something? We reverse engineer the numbers. So what that means is I want to actually be all in at 70% of $1.5 million, right? So that's where you got times 0.70, right? So that's basically 70% of this ARV number, right? So 70% of 1.5 is 1.050, right? Because 30% of 1.5 is $450,000. So that means it's $1,050,000. That's what I want my all in. Of course, if you can get it in lower, by all means, but all in number or less, right? So my maximal exposure, I want to be all in on this project that's worth $1.5 million. I want to be all in at $1,050,000, okay? So you find a house on LBI, right? And you're lucky enough that you can find something for, let's just call it, anywhere from $700,000 to $800,000, okay? That means you've got a budget of, and if we take the range, right? So you've got $350,000 budget or $250,000, right? That's your budget for renovations, okay? Because again, this plus your acquisition cost, right? So purchase, right? Plus the budget to renovate gets you to this, which ultimately, again, this budget plus your purchase puts you in your all in, which then at that point, those improvements should make the house worth $1.5 million, right? So that's going to be the textbook way of finding a solid fix and flip. Now, for those of you who are saying, well, Rube, if my all-in is 1.05, so $1,050,000, I don't need to make $450,000 on the flip. I'd be happy making $200,000. By all means, this is the conservative approach. People play it closer to the vest. This has been kind of tried, tested, and true. And this now will factor in the cost of doing business, right? So your closing costs as a seller, the cost of commissions, right? In the event the market shifts on you, right, it gives you wiggle room, right? So if you take this down in half, and let's just say now it's 85% and you're making $250,000, well, there's less wiggle room. That's all. But again, you can go ahead and play it closer to the vest, as I like to call it, and be a little bit more aggressive, and you don't necessarily have to adopt this model, but this is going to be the kind of textbook model. Again, we're talking flipping LBI 101 for kind of the newcomers to this, taking your money in a somewhat conservative fashion and how to go ahead and generate yield in this market environment, okay? And so this is where you really need to kind of understand things, because the cost of labor has gone up and the cost of product has gone up. So you really have to make sure you stay true to your budget. And you always want to go ahead and put together leave some type of cushion for a contingency budget. And again, this is a conservative model, okay? For the most part. I mean, I've had clients who, are looking for 50%. They're looking at wholesale, and those are just harder to come by. They're few and far in between, especially in this market environment. I mean, even something like this is hard to come by. So people are playing it more close to the vest because it's just hard. The competition out there is fierce, right? People can come to market and get more money for their houses. So a lot of times it's not easy to find these deals. But this, again, is just flipping guideline kind of 101. And you want to make sure this budget is really spot on. So get your estimates in order. Make sure you have a good relationship with your general contractor, your plumbers, your electricians, your framers, you name it, your roofers. Make sure that you've got good contacts, okay? And use the strength of the realtors, of my contacts, to help you get these numbers in, okay? And the more that you do them, the more business you give, the better you're gonna get at figuring out your budget. But things are changing today. So what the cost of X is today may not be 30, 60, 90 days out from now. So you really wanna make sure you get this budget honed in. So I hope that helps. Just a quick and easy kind of way of figuring out. And again, I like to use, if we're going to go somewhat conservative, right? I love to play in the laws of averages. So if I can play in this ballpark, knowing that that's the average sale price on LBI, and if I'm in there, that's the sweet spot, right? So that's like an investor who wants to come into the average national price of a house today, which is close to about $400,000. Well, then that's the type of house that you want to make sure you're coming to market with. So you would go ahead and just do the same numbers on the $400,000 house if that's the price point that you're playing in. So hope this helps. This is just textbook 101. However, you really need to know the market that you're playing in. So just because you found a $700,000 house on LBI or even an $800,000 house on LBI, that does not mean it ultimately can resell for $1.5 million, okay? So you've got to make sure that either you know the marketplace or you're teaming up, right? You've got to have your team. So one being the integral part is knowing the marketplace. So how do you know the marketplace? How do you cut your learning curve? You hire a realtor to help you find value. And so we want to make sure we look at the deal and say, okay, granted they're asking $700,000. Is there a value add in that house to make it worth 1.5? And same thing with the $800,000 house. Can we make it worth $1.5 million? And then, especially on LBI and with these waterfront communities, there's a lot of issues that you can get caught up in. So one is substantial damage. Does the house have to be raised? If it does, you're looking at a six-figure renovation budget just on the raise, okay? So north of $100,000 just to raise a house. And so that's going to eat into these numbers, right? Okay, you've got CAFRA on LBI. Right? So there's setbacks, right? How big of a house can you build in this lot that you have? So you got to know all of these ins and outs to ultimately get to the $1.5 million. And so just because you found something for $700,000 or $800,000, you got to be careful. So I hope this helps, and I will see you guys on the next one. Stay tuned.